Kalkadosh, Boker Or. Yeah? Masechet Batra Daf Samechei Aleph. We're starting on Samech Daled Amud, the last line where it says, Itmar Ravuna Amar Rav. It was stated, Ravuna comes and he says in the name of Rav. Halacha is like Divrei Chachamim, that a person that sells, right, be'ain ra'ah mocher, which means he sells with a bad eye. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Yirmiyah says in Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Akiva, the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, that a person sells with an ayin yafa. Basically, the question is, do you sell with a good eye or a bad eye? That's the entire question. Which, again, all the nafkaminas was, do you get also the, when I sell you, for example, a pet, or I sell you this, or I sell you also the path, or do I sell you that? That's the concepts of ayin yafa or ayin ra'ah. Elmaleh Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Ravuna. Says Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba to Ravuna. There was many times I said that the halacha was like Rabbi Akiva. He never told me anything. So basically, it comes out that I said it in front of Rav many times, halacha like Rabbi Akiva, right? And he basically never said anything. You're telling me that Rav says halacha k'divrei hachamim, but I said it in front of Rav that the halacha like Rabbi Akiva. V'ushatak. He kept quiet. So what's going on? Elmaleh, he went and he told him, Hechi tanita. How did you learn it in front of Rav? Meaning, how did you say it in front of Rav? So Elmaleh, he said, Ibcha tanina. We learned it the other way around, which means that the opposite of the way that you learned it. That according to Rabbi Akiva, you sell with an ayin ra'ah, and according to Chachamim, you sell with an ayin yafa. So he says, Mishum hachi loma. That's why he kept quiet. Meaning, for us, we hold that it's Chachamim, and Chachamim are the ones that say you sell with ayin ra'ah. The way that you taught it, it was Rabbi Akiva, and that he's selling it by ayin ra'ah. So therefore, since you were saying that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, but it's the same stock, that's why he kept quiet. He didn't care about the names. He just cared what's halacha. Exactly. He just said, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is ayin ra'ah, and that's it. That's why he kept quiet. Elmaleh Ravina Ravashi, says Ravina to Ravashi. Leima azdu l'tamaihu. Why don't we just say that Rav and Shmuel, they go according to the reasonings? Remember, this was a machloke between Rav and Shmuel. Do we paskin like Rabbi Akiva or Chachamim? Do we paskin like ayin ra'ah or ayin yafa? So he says, why don't we just say it? Because according to the reasoning. Ta'amar Rav Nachman and Shmuel, but it says that Rav Nachman and Shmuel, ha'achin shechalku, when brothers divide property from their parents, which means that the parent passes away, and now what happens is that people are going to come and they have to divide the Yerusha. They do not take a derech, not on one to another, velo sulamot ze al ze, and not sulamot one another, velo halonot ze al ze, and not halonot one another. So we're talking about whether it's the sulam, the ladders, the windows, the derech, meaning the second that they come and they start dividing. Exactly, because now they're splitting up between three, right?
Once they get to them,
now it's split up. Now that's it. V'lo matamayim, not the matamayim. V'yizaru bahen. So it says, and not the matamayim. V'yizaru bahen shalachot kvuot. This is the halachot kvuot. So, right? What does that mean? That's halacha. So that means it comes out that each person here, that now they come and they start dividing, they lose out on everything else. Meaning, we're going to say, listen, but they're brothers, and it comes from the same source. Yeah, but no. The father, when everything was together, he had all the windows, and he had all the irrigation canals, and all the different fields together. But now that each one is separating, even though it could be that you have two brothers, one right beside each other, they cannot share the irrigation canal, they can't share the... Why? Because each one is a separate entity in its own. That is the halacha according to Shemuel. Rav comes and he says, Yesh Lahem, they do have it. So it comes out that Shemuel holds be'ayin yafa u'moched, and therefore, according to him, each one, when he comes and he's selling his chelek, it's completely, and therefore he's not meshayer shum davar la'atzmo, and therefore it's a shitato, right? And according to Rav, it's exact opposite. So says the Gemara, tzricha. He says, really, be'emet, Rav and Shmuel need to argue in both cases. Why? We cannot learn the machloket by both of them. Now, why exactly? So he says, the yashminan be'ahi, as if it's going to be with Rav and Shmuel, they're talking about the shita of the brothers. Rav said, he could say, I want to live there just like my fathers live there. And therefore, he has a ta'ana that he should get the rights, just like the father. That's shitat Rav. Because Rav Amar Lifnechen, yesh lahem. They do have the zechut on one another, which means he could say, listen, I have a ta'ana. How did the father live? Why not?
Because
So the pasuk that he even says is dichtiv, as it says, tachat avotecha yubanecha. That meaning in place of the fathers should be the children, right? And therefore, even in there, Rav is going to be modeh. He says, no, for sure, he's got a tana. Aval beha, but to do with the machlok between Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim, Ema modeh to Shmuel. Maybe behemet he's modeh to Shmuel, which means Rav is modeh to Shmuel. The lachaz like Rabbi Akiva, which means by nafeh umocher, and therefore that's why you need this case. Vitmar beha. Now, if you're going to tell me the other case, that the machloket was only to do with Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim, Shmuel, only in that case does Shmuel say that he's going to come and he's going to sell by Yafa. But in the case of the Yerusha, maybe he's modeh to Rav. Tzricha, that's why you need both cases. Meaning, we have two different cases, one of Yerusha and one of Mechira. And on both cases, there's the machloket between Rav and Shmuel, and each one l'shitatam. But I cannot learn one from another, because each one has a chidush that I cannot learn from another. That's why we need to bring the machloket between Rav and Shmuel, b'shtehem, in both cases. Okay? Nekuda. Okay. Now let's go back to the Sikum. Elmaleh Rav Nachman Rav Huna, says Rav Nachman to Rav Huna, Hilchata kavatim, or Hilchata kavatayu. So Rav Nachman tells Rav Huna, is the halacha like me and like Shmuel, my rabbi, right? Or because Rav Nachman was a Talmid of Shmuel, or the halacha is like you, which is like you, like your rabbi, right? Which is Rav. So basically the question is, remember, you have two rabbis at the top, which is basically going to be Shmuel, Rav and Shmuel. And then you have the students of Rav and Shmuel. You have Rav Nachman, the student of Shmuel, and Rav Huna, the student of Rav. So basically, he comes and he says, what's halacha like? Like you guys or like us? So Elmaleh, he says, the halacha is like you guys. Bava Resh Kaluta, because since you're close to the Resh Kaluta, the Shchiche Dayane, there's a lot of Dayanim. And therefore, you see how much din there is, meaning there's much more shimush. So because of that, that's why the halacha is like you guys more, because you guys are greater in dayanut. Which is again, look at the greatness of the anavah, right? The respect in the anavah. Look at it. They come and say, is halacha like us or like you? Right? The majority of people, halacha is like me. Who are you? No, it's halacha. And the other comes, he says, no, the halacha is like you, because you guys do more shimush. You guys are closer to Resh Kaluta. There's much more of them. An incredible concept. Fine. 2 dots. Itman. It was stated. Shne batim. Yeah, you have 2 houses of one person. Okay, one of them is more inner than the other. So imagine it's like a house within a house. Shnehem b'mecher, if he sells both of them, or shnehem b'matana, or he gives as a present, right? There's another case. So, okay, fine. Yeah, shnehem b'mecher or shnehem b'matana, en lahem derech hazeh. Nobody has a path on each other. Right, which means that the Bala Panimi does not have the path in the Chitzon. Chitzon does not have the Panimi. All the more so if the outer one was going to be given as a matana, and the inner one was going to be a mecher, right? So therefore, we're going to say for sure we're not going to say that he sold to the inner one by Yafa, and to the outer one he gave it with the Ain Ra'ah, because since the outer one was a matana, for sure that was a much better Ain Yafa, basically. Basically, when you give a present, for sure you're giving it with a good eye. You're selling it, that's already the machloket. Do you give it with a good eye or not? But it's not true. Milo Tran, did we learn already in the Mishnah? But when one of these words, when he gives us a present, he gives everything. So Alma, see from here, whenever you give a present, you're always giving it with a good eye. So to here, whoever's giving it with a good eye, right? Who's ever giving a present is always going to be giving it with a good eye. Mishnah on the bottom of Samech Amud Aleph. 65a, Mishnah on the bottom. If you sell a house, you're selling the door with the house, basically. Meaning you can't come and start attaching the door and taking the door and say, well, I only sold you the house. No. You sold the house? Huh? No. It's kavua in the house, and therefore, since it's kavua in the house, you sold the house, you sold the delet. Avalot mafteach, not the mafteach. Why? Because since the mafteach is metaltel mimakom lemakom, so therefore you didn't sell the mafteach. Okay, which makes sense because basically, one second, because basically it makes sense because if right now I'm going to sell you a house, you can't come and start taking the chandelier, right? Or that many times it's as is. Now, if you want to come and say, okay, I'm selling the house, so therefore many times nowadays in contracts, you're going to say, okay, but I'm going to take these curtains, or I'm going to, why? Because usually when you're selling it, you're selling as is, right? Or you're going to say no, except for the furnishings or whatever. But again, this is the concept. Which one? We're going to explain the Mishnah. The Gemara is going to explain the Maseches. One second. Yeah. 1 second. Macharet machteshet hakvua. If you sold a fixed machteshet, I don't know, no, mortar? How do you say it in English? In English. Yeah, it was already fixed in the ground, but I don't know how you say it. It's a cliche kochim v'shochkim, dvarim dolim. It's like a crushing, but it's mortar. Very good. A mortar. Yeah, mortar, correct? Yeah, okay, the mortar. So if you're going to sell a machteshet, which is a mortar, it's a grinding utensil. Again, big things, yeah? So he says, "Avalo eta mitaltelet." So, okay, fine. You sold the machteshet, which is kavua on the karka, but not mitaltel. Macharete isturbal. If you sold, this is an igul, right? There's like a circle of etz, which is kavua, which they put around the rechaim, the mill, right? There's a rechaim, which is basically a mill. They come and they start, right, pushing this around. Okay. So he says, and they don't move it. Avalo et a kelet, but not the kelet. Kelet is the farkeset on top of the rechaim, right? Which they pour all the chitim in it. There's mitaltel. Basically, the rule is anything which is fixed. You're selling, not fixed, no. Velo et tanur kiraim, again, the tanur. Yes, because it's accepting, right? 100%. Yeah. Bizman she'amar, so now when he says who, vechol ma shebetocho, the house and everything which is inside of it, right? 65b, everything is sold. But why? Because the second that you say that, that's it. Everything is going to be sold, right? So inside. Fine. Says the Gemara. Leima matznitin de la Rabbi Meir. We're going to say that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Meir. Di Rabbi Meir, because if you're going to tell me it's going to be Rabbi Meir, he said in a Braita macharet kerem, macharet tashmisha kerem. If you sold the kerem, you sold even the tashmisha kerem. So obviously, our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Meir. If according to the Rabbi Meir, you sold the vineyard, you sold everything to do with the vineyard. So too, when you sell the house, you sell everything to do with the house, right? Exactly, which means the entire concept of it. Even if it's not kavua or not, nothing to do with it. Doesn't matter. So says the Gemara, you could even say to Rabbi Meir, hatam there bekvia. We're talking about things which are derech keva b'kerem, and you never take it out. Hacha here lo kavia. It's not kavua, and therefore, since it's not kavua, so therefore it doesn't work. So says the Gemara, right? You asked this before. 1 second. If this mafteach is only used for this delet, what does that mean then that this is not going to be kavua? Huh? Dumia, dome. Yeah, it's compared to. So he says, "Ma delet the kviya mafteach to kviya." Just like the delet is kavua, so the mafteach is kavua. So he says, "You're right." That you're right. We have to say that our Mishnah de la Rabbi Meir. It's not like Rabbi Meir. Meaning, again, according to Shtat Rabbi Meir, you sold the entire thing. Meaning that the second you sell the kerem, you sell tashmisha kerem. So too, if you sold the house, you sold tashmisha delet, which is the mafteach and everything else as well. So obviously, our Mishnah is not like going like Rabbi Meir. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita. If you sold the house, you sold the delet, the nagar, and you also sold the nagar. The nagar here is the briach. It's like, in the olden days, you used to have, how was the lock? The lock was that from behind the door, you used to have like two metals. Are you looking? Yeah? You used to have like two metals. And then you used to put a bar of wood. And therefore, when they used to come and try to push, since the wood was right there, right? So therefore, they're pushing, but they can't even open up the door. It was the bar, right? That's the briach. So he says, right? Ve'et nagar, ve'et man'ul. There's a lock for it. Avalot mafteach, but not the mafteach. Okay? So he says, not the mafteach. Macharet machteshet hachakuka. If you sold the machteshet, which is inside the house, you sold the machteshet, but not the kivua. So he says over here, not the machteshet kivua. Right? Why? Because it was made the talush, and then afterwards they came. Meaning, if it was made into the house, then it's kavua. But if it was separate and then you attached it to the house, it's considered a separate entity. Okay? Macharet itztrubol. If you sold the itztrubol, which was, again, this was the part of the which was attached to the how do you call this? Attached to the windmill, right? Avalot the kelet, but not the kelet, which is going to be metaltel and not kavua. Lot turim v'tekiraim v'lot rechaim. And all these things, because these things, whether it's tanur, different types of ovens, tanur, kiraim, yeah, all these things is going to be. But not the tanur, kiraim, and rechaim, but all these things are movable objects. Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says, anything which is connected to the ground is considered like the ground, which means that even if it was first attached and then you mechaber oto, zeu. Okay? Fine. When he told them, when he says, who, v'chol ma shebetocho, all of it is going to be sold. Benkach ubenkach, whether it's one or another, lo machad lo et habor v'lo et hadut v'lo et hayetzia. He didn't sell not the board, the dut, the yatzia, which is basically all these things, which are different types of pits, right? Which are inside, whether it's their, they how do you call this? They're used. It says here the cheder or the gag, which has a makeh, or all these things, they're considered like a separate entity. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Tzinor, when you have a tzinor, whether it's made out of wood or even, shechakako ulvasov kivao. So you came and it was talush, and then you made it kavua into the karka. So poseret mikveh. That's poseret mikveh. In kivao ulvasov chakako. But if they made it first kavua and then they were mechakek et zeh, okay. So then he says, "Eno posel mikveh." It's not going to be posel the mikveh, but then it's not considered a kli. Remember, whenever it's already a kli, so if it's considered mayim tlushim, which is waters which are detached, and therefore if the water comes into there, it becomes pasul for the mikveh, and that's it. So mani, who is this? It's not Rabbi Eliezer, not Rabbanan. Hey, Rabbi Eliezer, which Rabbi Eliezer? Ilema Rabbi Eliezer debate. If you're going to tell me it's Rabbi Eliezer of the house that we just learned, that Rabbi Eliezer said that when you have a machteshet, even though it was made talush, and then you were kovea it into the house, that it's not going to be considered a kli already. So he says, 1 second, maybe it's because Rabbi Eliezer holds mocher bain yafa mocher. He's selling with a good eye. And Rabbanan hold mocher bain la mocher. You're selling with a bad eye. So therefore it can't be that Rabbi Eliezer. Meaning, remember, we're saying that it cannot be Rabbi Eliezer. Which Rabbi Eliezer? If it's Rabbi Eliezer of the house that we just mentioned, you can bring a proof from there. Because maybe he just says, a person that sells, he's selling with an ayin yafa. So it has to be Rabbi Eliezer of kaveret dvurim. Rabbi Eliezer of the beehives. The Tanam, as we learned to the Mishnah, kaveret dvurim, when we're talking about the beehives, which is going to be mechubal karka, Rabbi Eliezer, it says karka, it's considered karka. The kotvim alea pruzbol, and they're going to write a pruzbol on it because it's considered karka. Remember that it has to have karka in order to write a pruzbol on it. In order for you to write a pruzbol, you need karka. Pruzbol is after shemitah when it's going to annul all the deals. So therefore, you have to have karka, and therefore that's when you're going to be able to write pruzbol. It's not going to be mekabel tuma, and then we continue Bezat Hashem tomorrow.